Am I ready? Oh, good.
Sorry.
Continue.
Since we've gotten underway, I think we'll maybe make our official welcome and then we'll get started if that sounds good to everyone. I want to say a warm welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining us this evening for Live at the Guild. My name is Leslie Pickle and I am the Managing Director of the Urban Guild. And the Guild is an organization of design professionals who design places people love. We are architects, engineers, planners who design places to make an impact in the world. And that's a testament to most of you who are on this evening. I would like to warmly welcome tonight's presenter, Geoffrey Mouen. Geoffrey is an Urban Guild board member, but he is most importantly the founder of Geoffrey Mouen Architects, now based in Celebration, Florida, and has served as town architect of Celebration for the last 22 years. Additionally, for those of you who are joining us perhaps from the ICAA Florida chapter, he was a founder of that chapter there in Florida. So we're delighted to have him with us this evening, and I won't take up too much time so he can get underway. Just a couple of housekeeping items since we are technically a Zoom meeting. If you would like to please make sure you stay muted throughout the presentation. It will last about an hour, and then we will have time for Q&A, which we will likely handle through the chat function as the presentation ends to facilitate the ease of discussion. And the final thing for those of you who are needing credits for either AIA or APA, if you can just please make sure that the name that's represented on your screen matches your membership profile. That'll just really help me for recording the attendance this evening. And with that, I would just invite you to mute yourselves and enjoy this presentation, and we'll give a warm welcome to Geoffrey. Thank you so much.
Leslie, thank you so much. And I also want to thank Ann Finch of the Florida chapter ICAA, who put this notice out to everyone. So thank you, Ann. And thanks for having me and allowing me to present this project. And I'm going to talk about Celebration mostly, and also Baldwin Park. And I'm just going to start with my slides. I have many slides. I don't want to go through the back history of Celebration. There's been a lot written about Celebration, and you can find much of that writing in, there was a CNU council on Celebration. There was in Bob Stern's Paradise Plan, there's a great chapter on Celebration. And even recently, Andreas wrote an interesting back article, or an article on the backstory of Celebration, how the planners were selected, which is quite fascinating. That's in Diru Tudani's new book, Reflections on Seaside. Joe Barnes has a note in there too. Let me share my screen. I'm coming to you live, not really live. This is my COVID man cave office workout / garage. So this is where I've been since COVID, and you may see that I'm wearing a tie trying to fake that COVID is over. So I'm back into the swing of things here. Thank you all for joining me. I'm going to talk about Celebration in Baldwin Park primarily. And what we see here is an aerial map of Orlando, downtown Orlando in the middle, right?
Sorry to interrupt you. I apologize for the interruption, but can you share your screen? We can't see the presentation.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Good idea.
Okay. Thank you.
Good idea. Coming to you live. Okay. How's
Perfect.
that?
That's
Good.
perfect.
Okay, great. So there's my little man cave, right? All right. And so here, there are several projects that New Urbanism and Celebration particularly has influenced in Orlando. I really only have time to talk about Celebration and a little bit of Baldwin Park. These are intense, big, massive projects with huge corporate structure behind them and lots of money. These are not incremental investments at all. These are really amazing monumental projects. The reason I'm showing you this map really is sort of get our bearings here, but also notice how many lakes and wetland corridors are scattered throughout central Florida. There really is a huge number of wetlands and ponds and lakes that are part of the ecosystem. And the water system in Celebration and Disney World actually are the headwaters that go all the way down to the Okeechobee and ultimately into the Everglades. So these are really important ecological environments that we're dealing with here. You can see Disney World down at the bottom left with Celebration below it, and Baldwin Park right next to downtown Orlando. And you can just visually see the difference in the density in the land use here. So there are huge differences between these projects, and I'll point those out as I go through this. Celebration is this gray area down here. All of that land is about 10,000 acres, that gray area at the bottom. It's 1/3 of the property of Disney World. It's really, Disney World is 40 square miles and it's huge, but you can also, again, see this sort of natural environment that is taking up most of the land. And I-4 is the corridor running north-south, sort of west to east, north, connecting Daytona with Tampa. And if you've been on I-4, it is a sort of toxic, scary place. And Disney World is completely wrapped around by this red line, Epcot in the center, Magic Kingdom at the top, and Celebration at the bottom. When they decided to develop this land, they knew that I-4 was really slicing through the land, cutting them off completely from the parks that are to the north, and realized that it'd be very, very difficult to do a theme park down here or sell it off. The other thing that was happening is the environmentalists in the state of Florida were really starting to capture and redefine all of the wetland corridors. And so they were very nervous about getting stuff started, as well as providing transportation systems that bring people into Disney World. This is a very important aspect to it. So the Osceola Parkway, the 192 corridor, the Central Florida Greenbelt were very important aspects to be able to bring people into Celebration. And one of the ways to, and Tom Lewis, who was with the state DOT and is a fantastic FAIA, wonderful leader of Celebration early on, told me that one of the reasons the housing development works so well for Disney is that it provides rooftops for interchanges to be built and supported by federal funds or state funds. So it's just so many things lined up to make this a good decision to do a residential community. And I won't get too far back in the history of how it started, but here you can see this dark gray area at the bottom is about 4,700 acres of the 10,000 acres, and it is forming all of the different buildable areas. This is not sort of contiguous land here. There's lots of patches of wetland in the midst of uplands that had to be preserved. So we're dealing with land that is isolated in very complex ways. And there are two main roads, Celebration Avenue, which is sort of acts like a necklace connecting all of the different villages together, along with Celebration Boulevard, which is more of a commercial corridor connecting the boulevard with the rest of the town and almost separating I-4 from the town of Celebration. Here, just for a sense of scale, these are 5-minute walks around each village. You can see the town center with an elementary school right in the middle of that town center. North Village to the right, South Village, West Village, Artisan Park at the bottom. Each of these little 5-minute walks has a center of town, and it's either a park or a facility with a gym and a meeting house, um, or a clubhouse. The town center is the only area where there's really retail and mixed use development in that zone. Notice too that the high school is far down on the bottom left, um, almost disconnected from the town. Originally, where the elementary school was, it was a K through 12 school, but the state of Florida and the Osceola County School Department required 3 other elementary schools to feed into the high school, requiring additional space. And it was decided that the high school would be built down in this other area. And they also felt like, well, even though they're going to bus a lot of students around, high school students also drive cars, and they can be put down there. So the other aspect is that the hospital is on the other side of the 417 Greenway highway system. The hospital is like a whole district which is really booming. That the Florida State Hospital, or the Florida hospital system, is really a huge program, and I'll show you some pictures of that. Zeroing in, focusing in down on the town center here, with the first village, Celebration Village, we see that 5-minute walk and a 10-minute walk that sort of connects people and allows all the residents to live in Celebration in this zone to be able to walk to town. But Celebration Avenue intersects with this Water Street running vertically here in a town square, and our mixed-use town center is right here down at the bottom. Notice the wetland pieces sort of connect or dividing up the spaces. This isn't a problem. We actually embraced all of the natural landscape and wetland areas. We didn't say, oh, let's turn our back on that. It actually became quite a strong element of the design and the planning. So roads would sort of terminate on public space and on wetland space rather than on civic buildings. The only exception really to that is in the primary town center with the golf course to the north and the town center at the bottom. So we really, in a way, celebrated the fact that we are in this green environment. And that not only fits in the planning, but it also comes down all the way down to the design and detailing of various buildings and the town center, and details on the buildings. So this is a kind of a distribution map that shows the different lot sizes that were distributed in the residential blocks of the town center, or the Celebration Village here. Obviously, the red is the estate lots, right? And then the orange are the village lots, and the yellow is the cottage lots. So they go from large to small. The estate lots are the largest lots. The village lots are second to the largest, and they get smaller as you go down. Obviously, what's happening here is that the planners decided to associate like product across the street from each other. So you see the village lots are always across the street from other village lots, and the cottage lots are across the street from cottage lots. And the division is really happening at the alleyway. So it's interesting that children can play with the kids in different size homes quite easily, and so do the adults, by the way. But the streetscape and the sizes of the homes relate to each other, creating an urban context that is symmetrical in almost all cases. You can also see many squares and sort of hippodrome shaped squares and boulevard pieces here that are highly groomed and controlled landscapes. So there's a lot of passive parks that are dispersed in this in this first phase, and that theme has been carried on quite a bit. Um, Here are some of those parks, passive parks. Water Street, right in the center of town, going from the golf course to the town square, and on the left, Long Meadow. These are beautifully well managed, homeowner association managed parks. Also, the community development district manages these parks, but they add an incredible kind of landscape right in the heart of the community. This is not as urban as many of our new urbanist projects are. So the other thing is the roads curve gently to fit into the wetland shapes. And it was sort of identified as the solution to also help slow cars down, but you get this picturesque feel of a streetscape. And you always feel the sense of the space as you drive through it or walk through it, rather than how far it might go. So the curve is quite interesting. Notice too, the curb at the edge of the road is this classic F-type curb, which is kind of a rolled gutter. And it's a Osceola County standard, engineered standard. This is a fairly wide street. With that curb, it even feels wider and easy to drive down. Many of our later new urbanist projects, including Baldwin Parks, which I'll show you, has a much tighter feel and much more crisp feel to it. The alleyway on the right, notice it's a 10-foot wide alleyway. All of the trash, the electrical utilities go in the back. The fiber optic system go in this alleyway. It's an inverted road, and we had to add 2 feet of concrete basically to the sides of the alleyway in order to allow the dumpsters and the trash pickup to manage through this alleyway. And you can see on the right is a townhome backing up to the alleyway, and an estate home on the left backing up to the alleyway, and lots of green space in between. And we put the mailboxes on Campus Street on the alleyway so that people could park easily on the street. When you have a series of townhomes and mailboxes every 20 feet, no one can park on the street because the mailman doesn't want to get out of his car here. So alleyway and streets, that whole pattern has been repeated over and over through each village in very specific ways and very, very similar ways relating to the wetland corridors, and all with higher densities towards the center of each village. And at the edges, the larger homes sort of back up to the wetlands and waterways, which we find sort of natural. The town center has a series of mixed use buildings in them. They have office buildings, the cinema, which actually is shuttered right now. It's a whole long story I can tell you about in questions and answers if you want to know. And office buildings. Note how small these buildings are in relationship to the streets. They are all this 3-block center space around a water's edge has been designed to be built all at once, but with incredible intricacy and complexity. So buildings have lots of space between them. They hold the front edge, and the diversity of the buildings is quite interesting. The mixed use buildings are 2-story townhomes above retail shops. And that's actually occurred along Celebration Avenue horizontally across the square as well. So here is the view from the town square, that intersection of Celebration Avenue and Market Street. And you can see the shops on either side with townhomes above them, 3 stories, buildings of different color, different proportion, different style, different language, and quite complex in its design. Pretty amazing for having just designed this all at once, and Disney deciding we're going to build this town center at one time, all at once. We're going to invest in it, And the thought was that people will come. And sure enough, 1,500 people showed up for the first offering of residential property. And obviously this is Disney, so they sold it and it did well. Getting back to my wonderful experience at Bob Stern's office, this is the war room at Jack Robertson's office, Cooper Robertson Partners. On the day that, and that's a 1/4-inch model of the whole town center right there that we built. On the day, this is the day that Bob Stern sort of assigned all of the signature architects, the icon famous architects, their individual buildings to work on. So in the foreground here, we have Robert Venturi and Caesar Pele. Michael Graves is kind of standing up right in the center of town there, looking down, trying to find his little post office. The story is he got the smallest building in Celebration because he had the huge hotels, the Dolphin and Swan hotels at Disney. But everyone, Charles Moore is here, really incredible cast of architects that have worked on this. And I just want to point out too, that the town center was really fashioned and laid out by Robert A.M. Stern Architects and Cooper Robertson. We actually put together very strict design codes for each building for the star architects, if you will. Philip Johnson designed the town hall, Charles Moore, Robert Venturi, and each person had a very specific footprint to follow. The other buildings were sort of split up between Robert Stern Architects and Cooper Robertson. And really the talent in the office shined here. This is where so many people worked on different buildings for the town. These are the sort of famous signature buildings designed by these famous architects. And you can see the sort of signature style that they are designing. Robert Venturi did the bank in that postmodern, playful way, and Charles Moore with his whimsical tower. Philip Johnson appropriately designed this hypo-style building that really feels like a Florida bureaucratic building. It's sort of funny that that's the town hall right in the center. And Michael Graves, obviously, Caesar Pele did a beautiful job on the theater itself. The rest of the buildings were meant to be background buildings, and we tried to make them background buildings. Done very well. In this picture, you'll see the orange building in the middle, which is on the east side of the street, has an arcade over the sidewalk. And that was very intentional because the sun is really hot in the afternoon in Florida, and the western sunlight shines right into those shop fronts. So the arcade was added to the front of that. And I can name the different architects in Bob Stern's office that designed all of these, in Jack Robertson's office, because I was there. Dan Lobitz designed the building on the right. So it's really fun to look back at who worked on these buildings, but they're done in a way that are scaled appropriately, and they're quite simple. You know, these buildings are not really expensive, complex buildings at all. They're stucco, they're block and frame with affordable windows and asphalt shingles. You know, this doesn't take expensive materials and complex design to make things work well for people. And I'll tell you, people absolutely love it here. The other thing that is important, we use small buildings and permeable walls. So there's access from the roads to the parking lots and to all of the courtyard spaces beyond and intermixed within the space. So it's very permeable, it's very open. And from a pedestrian standpoint, it feels very safe and meant for people. It's not meant for cars. And even though the cars can flow through here, it works very well. Here's all the vias and courtyard spaces between these buildings, which is extremely complex and successful in a way that people use these spaces. I would say that the one thing we've sort of underestimated was the amount of space needed for restaurants to have trash and mechanical equipments and storage. And that has been managed fairly well. And I'll show some pictures, but this little picture on the bottom left is the Starbucks with this little space that people gather in almost all day long for a cup of coffee, under the tree, under the umbrellas. It's really fabulous. And all of the back spaces behind the buildings work really well. The other interesting project that I was able to work on with Paul Whalen is this convertible, not live work, but it's an apartment. The whole building started out as an apartment building with 16-foot wide, 1-bedroom apartments on the first floor and a townhouse 2-bedroom apartment on the second floor. So the first floor are all 1-bedroom apartments. Each apartment has 2 bays. The second floor has the 2 stories, and you access the apartments on the second floor in the back in a catwalk. But the neat thing about this building is that we converted all the first floor apartments to offices and retail spaces. It really allowed us to start with apartments in the development and then sort of convert building space to retail as the demand grows, rather than trying to predict exactly how much retail space you need in a building or in the whole town center. So these have all been filled up with private development or private owners, different offices and retail spaces. So it's worked out really well. This is the other side of town that we've done the same thing on just across the Market Street on Celebration Avenue. A title shop, a hair salon, a dry cleaner, they all filled in quite comfortably into this first floor. You can take 2 bays or 3 bays or 4 bays, whatever they needed, and the building heights were all set. Now we had to adjust some of the building codes changes, so we added some sprinklers to the system. Not a big deal, but other than that, they plugged in quite easily. Here's those back of house kind of parking lots that allows the whole town center to fill up with people. But there's never enough storage for these restaurants. So you really have to tame them, but pre-plan exactly how much space they're going to need depending on the size of their facility. So it's an important thing as planners to keep in mind, and always make enough room for the trees to grow. We've had some problems. These trees are 20 years old and they're not as healthy and beautiful as the ones on the streets. And it's all about the space they have to grow in between the cars. So you've got to give them space. Otherwise, it's horribly hot in that parking lot. So add the trees. The promenade at the center of town is pretty fantastic. We have, before COVID, we had probably 40, 45 planned events at this town center. And, there would be sometimes 10, 12,000 people coming to the town center to watch the fireworks. And it actually worked. People could park on all of the adjacent streets. They'd fill up from multiple, 4 or 5 blocks away and walk down to the town center. And the town center, because it wraps around and is permeable, sort of accepts the huge crowd. And then when the huge crowd goes away, the streets still feel appropriately scaled for casual day, walking your dog down the street and spending time at the cafe. So it really is amazing how well that adds and subtracts. Advent Health, Florida's largest health hospital system. This hospital, designed by Robert Stern Architects, Michael Jones in his office is really principal design architect, with Paul Whalen, the partner in charge. These guys did a fantastic job. This hospital is amazing because all of the corridors are on the outside edge of the wall, and you can see all those windows. So as you experience the building coming in and out and going to offices and doctor's appointments, you experience this beautiful natural light inside the building. This sort of rounded shape end here that's sticking out to the left is a 60,000 square foot health club. The Advent Health System believes in wellness as well as curing people. So they encourage people to come and work out. That's my gym. I go there every day. The little pavilion is a chapel. And then the interesting wings to the right are the wings for the beds that people stay in after their procedures. And in the center of the hospital is where all of the complex action happens. There's several training facilities here for people who come around from all the world to learn the Da Vinci system, which is that um, octopus-like thing you see on the bottom right. So state-of-the-art hospital, fantastic to have within walking distance of my house, and really incredible. Several are other buildings along the boulevard. These are commercial office buildings. The boulevard up against I-4 highway. Cooper Robertson Partners designed this 4-story office building, which is actually coming back to life, thank God, since COVID is ending. So, but one thing that has happened over time on the corridor, all of it was initially planned for offices, but they have changed out some of those parcels for residential projects. This is a brand new project by Torty Gallison Partners, a very interesting 4-story Art Deco themed project because the whole corridor is themed on the Art Deco pattern. Brant Hay, our Urban Guild member, who's championed our awards program, designed this storage facility. This is an air-conditioned storage facility that I think it's the best storage facility around. It's in the cool Art Deco design. Brant has designed several other buildings in Celebration, and 2 schools which are really fantastic. One that won a Meisner medal as well. So Don Cooper, an Urban Guild member, designed the Catholic Church. Fabulous, huge Catholic church. This thing is holds like 700 people. And one thing I can tell you is always make room for churches. This is a school that I designed as part of the Community Presbyterian Church. This is a 15,000 square foot building that houses preschool, youth organizations, and offices for the school. The building on the right is a columbarium. So you can intern ashes in Celebration. You can, as part of the church, you can get buried at Disney if you want here. So, you can be born in Celebration, live in Celebration, work, and even die and live here. There are 6 churches that have sprung up. 3 of them have built great facilities for themselves, and there are others that are working out of the hospital and the high school. Always make room for churches. They are great civic partners and always seem to have a draw to really strong community members as well. So I'm going to take one step back here to 1995. This is about builders. Disney flew the builders up to Charleston and got all of the master planners and architects to come to Charleston to not only learn more about Celebration, but to experience the quality of the beauty of Charleston, and really learn about what traditional architecture is all about. That's Jack Robertson on the right, Ray Gindra sitting down at the bottom, Ray Gindra's in the center, and Bob Stern. Some of you who may be on the call may recognize yourself on these. Derek Smith is in the middle, in the back, and Paul Whalen. So I just want to shout out to those guys who I worked with quite a bit here. It was so important for the production builders to come to this, because the production builders wanted to keep doing what they wanted to do. They're making money doing what they wanted to do. They didn't realize how good they could have it. And one of the things they complained about was those porches. We don't want to have those porches. We never build houses in Florida with porches. People want air conditioning. Well, after a year of building porches and selling homes in Celebration, they wouldn't build a house without it after they learned how successful it was. Also, at the same time in 1995, there was a lottery that 1,500 people showed up just to get their name on a list and pull lottery number that would offer them the opportunity to put a deposit on a lot for 350 lots that were available. And when your number was called and you showed up at the meeting with the realtor, you had to have your check ready. Otherwise, you were passed on to the next person. So the demand was extremely high. And every single village that opened up after Celebration Village, the initial Celebration Village, was there was a line out the realtor's door to sell lots. It was incredibly successful, and someday maybe we'll experience that again. I need to mention the Celebration Pattern Book, drafted by Urban Design Associates, Ray Gindros and UDA and Rob Robinson. They did a fabulous job with Joe Barnes sort of also working on this very specifically. There's some misnomers here, and I need to clear this up. The Celebration Pattern Book is a guide for the architects and builders, but it's also a marketing material that's shared and shown to buyers to sort of not only promote the products, but also to convince them that their house is going to be right and built well. The pattern book is divided into two parts primarily: the community patterns and the architectural patterns. Community patterns show us where the houses sit on the lots, where the facade zone is, where the private zone is, where the garage goes, where the main body has to be. That's the community patterns. And each product type, each house type has these community patterns. Also, very detailed models and exercises were done to study the various parks and streetscapes to more specifically define the setbacks for the lots. This was all predetermined so that when somebody came in and built a house, they knew what to do and they knew how to build it. This wasn't one house at a time. This is 300 houses a year. This is a house a day going up. This is mass production, and with an extremely complex builder program that was very successful. So we had to have everything in place. This diagram you see on the upper left shows the facade zone in pink, and the green is the setback. And you can see how it gets closer at the end of this hippodrome shaped park. It gets closer, pinching in the setback at the end of this park to help frame the park. Incredible. And that was done for every single street and in Celebration, all the way through this phases of construction. Amazing effort. Architectural patterns. These are 6 styles that were identified as sort of significant styles relevant to the southeastern United States. This is a platform for people to grow from. This was not a sort of hurdle in which the builders had to barely achieve. There are more than 6 styles of architecture in Celebration, even from the very start. So it's sort of a misunderstanding that, oh, there's only 6 styles of architecture. But actually, it's really a model to start from. And we encouraged independent or individual architects to really evolve past that. The pattern book is very successful at describing architectural styles, the massing, the porches, the details of the porches. It's very effective. It's a very easy thing to communicate to lay people why a building has to have a certain window pattern or a certain eave detail. It goes all the way through down to materials as well, and then shows variations of that. I would say that these are the first sort of initial demonstration houses designed by great architects, historical concepts, Ike Kligerman Barclay and John Regan. These are in the home business district, and they sort of exemplify some of the patterns that are in the pattern book, but you can see they've sort of taken them a little further. Historic Concepts did this sort of midland architecture where the columns come down outside of the porch. And then Eichen Kligerman did a Carpenter Gothic version of the Victorian with little Mickey ears in the porch details, if you can see it. But just amazing. Michael Waller, another Urban Guild member, did the construction documents for these homes. So shout out to him because he lived in Orlando and did those CDs. John Regan also did the townhomes and sort of community centers, other projects that Historic Concepts has produced. You can see these are not cookie cutter houses at all. They are completely well designed with fabulous proportions and details. LRK, and I need to mention Mark Jones, is the current town architect for the Celebration Company, and he took over for me in 2002, I think it is. And he actually worked with Issa Homes, a semi-custom home builder, and Derrick Builders to build this Southern Living home. And these are all over Celebration, just a fabulous, well-detailed, simple architecture. The plan is sort of classic Celebration home with a living room and a dining room off of the central foyer, a family room, breakfast room, and kitchen in the back facing the backyard, master bedroom down, and 3 bedrooms up with a bonus space. That is a classic village scale plan, but also most houses in Celebration have these formal rooms up front with an entranceway, including my own little bungalow home. Here's a streetscape of production homes that has a rich variety of character and detailing. Each house is distinctly different from one another, with ample, deep porches and raised stoops. So amazing variety and rich character. We had monotony rules. The monotony rules requires that no 2 houses with the same floor plan or elevation be built too close to another one. So in the garden and cottage lots, the smaller lots, we allowed a house to be repeated at the 3rd lot or diagonally across the street. And we thought that was okay. And it pretty much turned out good. Village lots were bigger homes and their separation was 5 lots. And then no custom estate home was to be repeated within any village neighborhood. So those are the monotony rules. It sort of turned out, this is the Devonshire Victorian, one of the most popular plans in town. Everyone loved this, and it ended up being repeated way too often. So we had to develop a few more rules to help control this house being repeated. Remember, clients are walking into the sales office, selecting a house and saying, which one of these can I afford? Where can I put it? And I want it built as soon as possible. So there was demand happening, incredible demand. Beautiful house. This is actually a front-loaded version with the garage set in the rear. The picture on the left shows that variety of cottage homes with different setbacks and various porch details in different styles. It got to be so jumbled, so much variety, that it almost was too busy. So when I came, I recognized this sort of complex variety happening all over the place, was almost monotonous in itself. And I suggested that we take this new builder that we were introducing, Cambridge Homes, and design 5 or 6 craftsman style homes and put them right next to each other, just like they would do in the 1920s, and let them all be the same, paint the shingle different color, and let it be what it is. And we did that in several spots. In fact, with Cambridge Homes, this little area, the first week that I was here in Celebration, coming from Bob Stern's office, I had suggested, as we were moving into South Village during the engineering phase, we were reviewing a 60% engineering phase drawings, that instead of having a cul-de-sac, and the cul-de-sacs are almost necessary in many places because we have lots of wetland around. They're also buried in the middle of larger blocks. I had suggested that we stretch out the cul-de-sac and create a park. And it's like, wow, can we do that? And the engineer said, yeah, it's not too late. And we said, let's do it. And what happened is that we created this little park in the middle of what would have been a cul-de-sac. So this is a great lesson for anybody who has to do a cul-de-sac. Just stretch the cul-de-sac out and do a park. Notice too that the elevation +3 on the right is the alleyway, and the Croton Place Road is at +1. This allowed this new production builder to have a zero entry in the back, slab on grade construction, and have an elevated front stoop at the front of the house. So it was another subtle change in the engineering that allowed us to create a very simple, very affordable home. We wanted a new house price point, a lower house price point. $139,000 was the starting point. My house at 1,800 square feet was 179,000 square feet, and is a 3-bedroom house. So the builder said, raising the house up is expensive. Adding all these porches is expensive. What can we do? And we said, well, we're going to come up with a couple of solutions. And this is one of them, where we raised the grade behind the house, built a continuous wall at the front to transition down to the sidewalk, and simplify the architecture. So there's very simple stoops, but still all the proportions, all the detailing we need work quite well. And we pull the house right up close to the sidewalk. This has turned out to be just an incredible place. I'm sorry, it's almost 7 and everyone's getting hungry. We have a Thanksgiving dinner here every year that is sort of a potluck, and it's absolutely turned out to be a fabulous community space. As we go into a new village, we plugged and play with a parcel of land that was intended to be a condominium. And we said to this new builder, look, we want you to build 89 new houses in this area. And we're going to pre-plan every single house, every single park, every single color, every single thing. It's not going to be sold one house at a time where you plug and play with the houses. We introduced St. Augustine architecture, more craftsman style homes, duplexes, triplexes, and just had a great success in developing another vernacular architecture that's local to Florida. Solar panels, I have to tell you, the new law has required us to allow solar panels to face the street or any which way in order to maintain the high level of efficiency that they need to maintain. So originally we could say, put those solar panels in the back. It's okay. Put them in the back. We don't want to see them up front. But now we've been forced to say, okay, they have to be in front because the new law says that it has to be efficient. And if anything were to get in the way of the efficiency of the solar array, then they're allowed to do it. So we've adopted some other standards, low profile, gang together in simple locations to try and tame the look of these solar panels. So we think it's been successful, and why not? We got solar panels everywhere now, and this is an efficient way to handle things. Our first Tesla solar roof in Celebration was just put up a month ago, and I've yet to find out how efficient it is. I'm going to talk to the owner, but damn good looking. I think this is fabulous. We have problems, screw ups. This is one of the straws that broke the camel's back for me. But you can't get a production builder to do too much. You have to keep it simple. This was meant to be a classical broken arched pediment, right? Fairly simple thing to do. After they built this, I screamed and hollered, and somebody said, okay, we're just gonna let that one go. Well, sure, okay, there's a few mistakes in Celebration, and I know where they're all at, but I just have to tell you, you have to let some of this stuff go and fight the battles you want to fight. I'm going to skip over this. This is the alphabet soup government that's really complex, filled with community development districts and CROA and CANOA and ECDD. The way the whole celebration is managed, it's a complex thing that could take too much time. So I'm going to move on. I want to show an example of a current design a problem we had with an addition to a house where the original plan for this nice little classical home was to have a new building added at a later date along the side street. So you can see this garage apartment on the right-hand slide that fills the side street facade zone. And that helps to block off the view of the garage behind it. Well, this owner was allowed to build his house, much smaller house than filling the entire lot. And as long as he had a hedge that wrapped around it, and later on, the addition would be at that point to fill that side street facade zone. A new owner has come in and requested to do this addition on the right, which doesn't quite get to the facade zone, and it has its garage doors facing the side street. Well, we said that doesn't quite work. We did some sketch alternatives to show them that you could extend the house over a little further with the garage facing the street, which shows up on the garage facing the alleyway on the left-hand drawing. And they came back to us at the Architectural Review Committee with this design on the right. It was denied. It's gone to the appeals. And it hasn't gone to appeals yet, but it's on the docket for the next appeals meeting with the board, and we'll see what happens. Celebration Chronicle was the original newspaper. Celebration News, now a wonderful little magazine, was developed. These were run by the developer, the Celebration Chronicle, and basically highlighted achievements and new things happening in the town. And then the Celebration News was run by is run by the Homeowners Association. But the Celebration Independence was a grassroots independent newspaper started by a guy who was a newsman who just moved to Celebration. And obviously articles were quite different and interesting. The Independent doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately, but it's kind of interesting that there was a controversial newspaper happening at the same time. Celebration Foundation, amazing programs they do there. But I'm going to, due to time, I'm going to skip over this. We have a new urbanism committee in the Celebration Foundation that has developed a walking tour. We teach at the lifelong program in Celebration twice a year, and residents are constantly taking our walking tours and learning about new urbanism through our efforts, and just a fabulous group. Recently, the county has scheduled to repave our roads on Celebration Avenue, and we enlisted Rick Hall and Kimberly Horn to help us redesign some of the striping that was going on. Over the years, the county had adjusted the road to include turning lanes and sort of eliminating parking spaces. And we said, whoa, wait a minute, it's just speeding the cars up. And a group of us got together with the Community Development District and had several meetings, and we got the county to hire Rick Hall and Kimberly Horn to help us redesign our streets to return back to a bike lane and remove the turning lanes, increasing the parking spaces. And you can see on the bottom, what's proposed is a 7.5 foot parking space, a 5 foot bike lane, and a 10-foot travel lane. And that is sort of, we had a huge public meeting. Here's a protesting homeowner out measuring the road. This is really cool. On the day before the community meeting, he's out measuring the road, getting ready to, with his ammunition, to shoot down our idea of adding bike lanes to our city. And there was a huge turnout, and we had a lot of opposition, but the county was quite impressed with the turnout, and was happy to receive the documents from the engineers. And ultimately, the county has approved and will implement our design solution when they repave the pavement in years to come. So hopefully, fingers crossed, this will still happen. And I have to, I've been giving credit to all these people before, and I'm just going to pass over this. And there's the cast of characters, huge development team for many years worked on Celebration. Leslie, how am I doing on time?
You got about maybe 10 minutes.
All right. Baldwin Park is a completely different project, and I'm going to just note some very important things. The development team from Celebration sort of graduated and moved in and started developing Baldwin Park, including David Pace, sort of led by David Pace in his efforts. The Baldwin Park is in the heart of downtown Orlando, and is within a 3-mile radius. There's 100,000 people, which is a much different context than Celebration, and very important to the way that Baldwin Park was developed. It was the Orlando Naval Training Center, and they would train cadets here to basically work on ships. You can see in the middle of that picture, there's a mock ship with where cadets would train since 1975 all the way up until 1998. Naval training was done here for nuclear training center. So this was a very important facility for the federal government. But in 1993, with the BRAC closing of the various bases around the country, they slated this to be closed, and actually was. But you can see the incredible amount of infrastructure that was in this: 40 miles of utilities, a ship, an acre of arsenic. This was not a retrofit. This had to be cleaned up and completely redone. Several years of planning. As soon as the announcement went out, the city of Orlando spent many years under the guidance of Glenda Hood, the mayor, and Rick Bernhardt, had several meetings, and even Kevin Chaiskevsky, who worked on this for many, many years, is no longer with us, but honored quite well in Baldwin Park, had 200 meetings over a period of 3 or 4 years, and developed this suggested master plan, which ultimately the final design solution kind of followed. This is the base in 1998, the day of its closing, and the final cadets were graduated that year, and the next year they started demolition. This is the base in 2001 under the ownership of the Orlando Naval Training Partners. Pritzker family and David Pace and several other groups had worked on this. The master planners was Skidmore, Owens and Merrill, Cooper Carey, and local architects and engineers at Miller Sellons, Connor Walsh. By this time, New Urbanism was kind of known. We knew how to do it, and there was plenty of local talent to do. And I should say, other architects produced great plans as well, including DPZ. I think it was called Oakhurst Partners, or Oakhurst was the name of the project. Andres, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but many great plans. And then the city finally selected the Orlando Naval Training Center Partners to do it with that master plan. The demolition was incredibly massive. These are military grade concrete rebar buildings that took an extra 6 months to tear down because they were so reinforced. The gravel and waste from some of it was used in the underground retention in the park system. Here it is in 2004, and then today, 2021, multiple awards. The market values $1.2 billion. These are monumental projects. I would say one of the reasons the partnership was selected is they really took it to heart, the sort of park system that was part of the plan Rick Bernhardt created. It's all of Orlando, and you can see the application of the park system in the Orlando has a great rule that all of the lakes in the city of Orlando have to have public access around them with roads. And so in this project did, as well as the way the geometry configured. There are more than 28 connections, vehicular and pedestrian connections around Baldwin Park that connect to neighborhoods, residential neighbors. Despite the value of those neighborhoods, they made connections, which I think is really important here, and understanding the locations of the edges and how they dealt with it. Here is a busy road, McGuire Avenue on the left with 4 lanes and parking. The right side is Baldwin Park. The left sides are existing older neighborhoods. And we raised up this land and put it a little wall similar to what I showed you in Celebration, and did these beautiful Charleston singles along that edge. So embracing the busy street in an interesting way is a great solution right there. The village center has a core of mixed use retail, residential, as well a main street and a village green on the water. Village Center General is filled with apartments and townhomes. And then as we move towards the edges, it's more of 2 and 3 story single family homes, smaller blocks, narrower grids, and then the connections to the neighboring areas with bike paths and parks, and connections to Katy Way Trail, which ultimately is a bike path that runs all the way through town. As you can see from this map, the diversity of the housing sizes and lot types is as complex, if not more complex, than what we had in Celebration. And the connectivity with all the blocks is there as well. And you can see the various house sizes and builders on the right-hand side. Another huge developer builder program. You remember, this hit the market in 2001, a boom time for Orlando, and they sold fast and well. The town center has a 46,000 square foot Publix in the middle of it, and liner buildings that wrap around the back of it with a drop-off area for the trucks to deliver into Publix, hidden away, slipped in between the liner building with retail below and apartments above. The Publix faces a parking lot, which is important because there's over 100,000 people in this area are available to get into this Baldwin Park, people traveling through Baldwin Park from Winter Park, going to downtown and other directions. But it's the one requirement Publix had on the developer was, don't build any houses out in front of my parking lot for a few years. And the developer said, okay, we'll give you 2 years. Maybe it was 3. Anyways, once the building was healed and everyone knew where it was, the developer built out these beautiful live works along this sort of western edge here. Very interesting. There's a shot of the drop-off area and the parking lot that's dropped down below the grade level, helps hide the cars from the view of the streets. See how the street here is slightly narrower. It's not much. And the curb is vertical it's not that F-type curb. It's just a slight different design detail that makes all the difference to make this a more urban setting with beautiful trees and the beautiful lights and 4-foot sidewalks, setbacks like Celebration and other places. But that detail is so unique and important to Baldwin Park that take a look next time you're there. We were fortunate enough to design this community center in the heart of the first phase, which is won a Palladio Award in 2005. It's a very affordable building made of hardy plank and asphalt shingles. The inspiration was primarily from a local golf course building in Winter Park, and Edward Lutyens, the Plumpton Place building, which I learned so much about Lutyens when I was at Bob Stern's office. So I combined those two into making this award-winning project. So also, I better end soon. This is Baldwin Park's pattern book, which had 13 styles identified in it, all based on local precedent that we used. And we used all local architects and planners to work on Baldwin Park, which is a real testament to sort of infectious quality of Celebration, but also the skill and growth of new urbanism as Baldwin Park came about. So this was a very interesting pattern book to look at. We designed another house for the International Builders Show. I want to show this because we took out a road and created a muse. Everyone thought that was pretty genius, but in fact, it was just less expensive to take the road out and put in a park. And we charged premiums for the lots, and we created this fabulous place. This house took advantage of that by creating a 24 by 16 foot porch on the front of the house. And my task was to design a 2,300 square foot house for a family of two, sort of the nuclear family with two kids, husband and wife and two kids. It was actually my family. I have twins. So it was easy for me to conceive. As we do in most of our projects, we do sort of this analysis of proportions, which I learned well from Donald Ratner and Richard Cameron and all the great architects in early studies at the Institute. So the Muse rectangle, and Richard Salmons taught me much of this. So I apply these to most of our designs. We also designed this house for the International Builders Show in 2008, which we thought would be green without any gadgets. So you can actually turn this house off in the nicer months, 6, 7, 8 months of Florida, and allow turn the air conditioning off. The house faces the water. The prevailing breeze comes across the water, across the lakefront porch, across the pool, and enters into the house, ventilating the house through clear-story windows and a tower, keeping the house about 5 to 10 degrees cooler than what it is outside. Large overhangs, obviously, were used. The sleeping wing is on the east side of the house to be woken by the sun. The living wing is on the west side of the house where the sun sets, and allowing natural light to penetrate into the evening hours. And this was a huge success for us. We had a lot of good press on this design. We also designed the homeowners association to be a town hall. So with that, I'm going to stop there. I'm not going to talk about Disney anymore. I'm going to stop right there.
Thank you so much, Geoffrey. If I could ask you, we'll certainly give you a couple of minutes to catch your breath, and if you would like to stop the screen share, and I welcome folks to turn on your cameras if you like. I think we already have about 3 questions for Geoffrey. So if you'd like to ask him something, you're certainly welcome to put it in the chat. But I will begin, Jeff, if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
The first question actually came from Jeff Dyer early on, asking about following up from the CNU Congress. Bob Gibbs' presentation about the current state of retail, and wanted to ask you how things are going for retail and Celebration.
Oh, great question. So one restaurant, and keep in mind, Celebration, most of the retail in Celebration is restaurants. Okay, Celebration kind of acts as a amenity for its residents, but also a lot of tourists that come to Celebration because they're in the Disney World area. So there's no grocery store in downtown Celebration. It's on the edge, right? It's at the Water Tower Place. But there are several restaurants which have always been extremely successful. There's a t-shirt shop. There's the barber. There's a lot of small businesses that are very successful. Those are all still there. The restaurant, there's one restaurant that kind of vacated, D'Antonio's, and that there are 6 companies waiting to get in to that applied to get into that. The other restaurants are expanding, taking advantage of people who have left, and it's the expansion. Florida is open and Celebration is open, so I can go sit down and have dinner at a restaurant without even wearing a mask. So it's quite open and quite active. I guess Celebration is kind of fortunate because it's quite small, and I remember Bob Gibbs' statements about having smaller retail happening in and office space. So there's probably 80,000 square feet of retail on the ground floor of all those buildings, which is fairly small for a huge town center. And they're all very successful right now. The restaurants are active. They're all open. The bars are open. Starbucks is jammed. So Celebration is doing really well. Baldwin Park is also doing well, I might add, comparatively. Their office buildings, they have more office buildings, and I don't know how the occupancies are happening at those office buildings in the town center, but Baldwin Park is about 4 times the size of Celebration in terms of square footage of commercial space. Actually, probably 10 times the size in terms of total commercial space. So I bet their impact is greater, but I don't have those details on Baldwin Park.
Thank you so much for that. The next question shifts to transportation. Rick Geller asked if you have any thoughts about advocating for the Sunrail to extend from the Orlando airport to Disney and make a stop in Celebration. I hope.
Oh, yeah, that would be absolutely great. In fact, there used to be a right-of-way design for a monorail to come down into Celebration, crossing through Wide World of Sports all the way down, but I don't think that's in the works. So monorail is $1 million a mile or something, or probably 2 by now. But I'd love for the whole system to come all the way down into Celebration. I think the Disney has more power to bring that connection into an area that's closer to Disney than to Celebration. So I would love that to happen, but I don't think we have the population or the demand to draw that much, that proximity. It'd probably happen closer to Disney, but there may be a spur someday that connects. Sunrail also does come down into Kissimmee and all the way down into Point Siena, which sort of wraps around the backside of Celebration. And there is discussion, the county has required that with the new village designed and being built by Mattame Homes on the edge of town, that there has to be a backdoor connection that leads to Point Siena and the back of the county there. So all the residents are up in arms about it, but it's got to happen. It's been part of the original deal. So connecting to the other villages to the south and west is in the works.
Thank you.
Sure.
The next question is actually from Gary Brewer, and he asked if you could talk to us a little bit about, over the course of your career, who and how have you educated others, whether it's architects, developers, engineers, politicians, the builders themselves, how
Yeah,
that, yeah.
good question. Tough question, but good. For the most part, I think I am really most proud of teaching lay people about the fundamentals of good architecture and new urbanism. There, you can see the light in their eyes go off, like, oh my God, that's why this place looks the way it looks. Or now I understand. In fact, the clients the clients often get mad at me because they drive around town and they see all the mistakes that are out there. But in good humor, they're very kind about it, because when I sit down and talk to them about the architecture I'm designing for them, I I have to tell them, I have to give them the basic course on traditional architecture and classical. I have to tell them, and they say, wow, so I know, now I know. Um, and publicly, I've taught at Rollins College with Bruce Stevenson and Kevin Chyskevsky at Rollins College planning program, which was a fantastic program. Um, just basic drawing, and we've had urban projects those courses too. So I think teaching children. I've shown up at art classes at the elementary school to teach people about urbanism and planning, and it's amazing how much a fifth grader can absorb and actually pay attention to something they have never seen before. So that's actually quite fun too.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Besides, you've gotten lots of kudos in the chat, which I know you're probably not able to view, for your wonderful presentation. If being respectful of everyone's time, if anyone else has a question that you'd like to ask Geoffrey, I welcome you to voice it now.
I'd like to ask a question. I appear as Liz, but it's me still. It's Andres. Hey, why did Celebration Associates not continue to proliferate this as a model all over? Do you happen to know?
Ooh, good. Well, I'm not part of that Celebration Associate organization, which is a development team that grew out of the initial celebration team, which is Don Cloran and I think Charles Adams and others. But I think the scale of celebration is huge, and so is Baldwin Park. These are multi-million-dollar greenfield projects with, I guess, incredible effort behind them. When we look at other large-scale projects like Avalon and Oakland Park, I guess they're not quite as intense and complex. I know David Pace has done other projects in different places that are not quite the same scale or complexity, but perhaps it is that rich complexity that is a challenge with such a large production team. The 2008 recession really squashed a lot of projects. I had convinced Centex to do 3 big projects, including the one in New Jersey, which you actually laid out, Andreas, which not Hampstead, but another one. And the 2008 recession just totally squashed it. Ownership changed, and Centex, we did a wonderful project for them here in Orlando called Randall Park, but Centex drew back all of the local vice presidents in these different regions, pulled them back into Texas, essentially sold the company to Pulte. So there's a big transformation of these large corporations doing master plan scale developments. There are other master plan, large scale master plan, the ranch down Southwest Florida. But, I don't know about Celebration Associates particular, what they're working on.
Mhm.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions this evening?
Everyone's hungry.
I think it's, I learned a lot. I'm astonished again and again by the quality of what I saw there. I always thought that Disney would do everything in the first quality, and of course they wouldn't tell me anything. So you may know this story. I bought a lot at one point, and when you're transformed from a nobody into a customer, they gave you everything. And so I bought a lot. I took a building with Joe Barnes, I took it through processing. And I learned quite a few things. And then I sold a lot. And I have all their documents, their HOA documents, their codes and everything. And it really is first rate. I think one of the things that may dissuade other developers is that the quality of starting a Rolls-Royce factory every time, might dissuade them. They're accustomed to paying engineering and infrastructure a great deal of money, a great deal. But to get a team like the one Celebration had, I mean, even if you dispensed with all the hotshot New York architects, just to get it going the way it did, is really beyond what most developers expect to invest, and that might be it. So, I think what probably the world needs is as they used to say, needs a good 5-cent version of it.
Yeah. Well, the team, there's 8 builder teams being managed by not only the town architect, but infrastructure management team Disney supported. And when that group went to Baldwin Park, that complexity was there. And David Pace did an incredible job of hiring the right people to.
Well, what I heard is that, well, I've heard several things. One of them that is almost irrelevant, but it's a shame that sort of elite group somehow dissipated. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That it isn't galloping all over the world giving advice still. And I've always wondered why. I did hear why Disney didn't do a second one. It was a very short answer that was given to me. I said, Celebration didn't make as much as the Lion King.
Yeah.
We'd rather just make another Lion King.
That's true. Well, Disney is not finished. So there's
Finished with Celebration or finished doing, well, the European stuff, of course, is
well, they know that the theme park is their primary business, but there's a real estate arm that I think is not finished.
Mhm.
They did Golden Oak, which is a massive success of private development, private home community within the berm. And, that didn't take a huge team to do that, but there's a house for sale there for $2,500 a foot. And it's because it's Disney. It's more valuable than the Atlantic Ocean.
Mhm.
So people are moving there and building, very expensive homes. But I think that real estate arm of Disney is still quite active and interested. Disney is a powerful, big company now with all kinds of, feathers in different areas. So I don't think I think it's just beginning. I think that the evolution of Celebration will evolve into some of those things that you're thinking about.
I have you can't see it, but I have a long list of questions and comments.
Great.
I think it might be worth having, it's just too long.
Okay.
And they're actually small things. But I think it would be, I mean, I would really welcome a follow-up
Yeah.
on to have everybody at the Guild look at this thing, and those who have experience building others, and just have a follow-up discussion, you know, a real freewheeling discussion on this subject.
I think it's a
I would
great,
enjoy it.
it's
If-
actually maybe what some of the new urbanism is missing a lot of discussion about, which is, you know, how do we scale up
Mhm.
in these incredible projects?
I think we have to scale up, and I think we have to scale down as well.
How so? What do you mean scale down?
Well, they're much smaller tracks that have to be that you can't get, you know, you can't wake up the entire army
No.
to do it. And so some kind of simpler, you know, simpler coding, single person running it, you know, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
which should be possible with all the knowledge that has been acquired already, because a lot of what happened in Celebration was the prototyping of everything.
Yeah.
And so, no, I think the next step is actually the problem of large numbers, and how do we do all of these things much less expensively?
Yeah.
You know, that would be the challenge. Not more expensively. I mean, we've all done that, but less expensively.
The weird thing about Celebration is they built the town center first, and like, whoa, you know, let's go live there.
Yeah.
You know, they've got something.
By the way, one of the things I heard in an early story
Yeah.
is that somebody like Bob Stern, somebody said, you've got to build townhouses. And the marketing people, who were all rear view mirror people, said, no townhouse has ever been sold south of Orlando, period. Okay. And those architects insisted. The townhouses flew off the table.
It's true.
And because the plan was already fixed and the buyers had already been told what would go near them, they very much regret they didn't have more townhouses. And one of the things about Celebration, I was present there at the design. And one of the things that was so interesting is that they didn't use marketing people, not a single one. They used futurists.
Yes.
You know, people from, because of course the marketing people just tell you what sold last.
Yeah.
It's incredibly conservative. They knew they wouldn't get anything except, you know, suburban stuff. That's what's up, because that sold very well. That still does. So what they did is they used futurists that weren't even in real estate. You know, Times like Yankelevich, Stanford Research Institute. I remember their presentations.
Mm-hmm.
And what they and it was actually very interesting. They came up with a term called neo-traditionalism. They came up with that term, neo-traditionalism. It was theirs.
Wow.
And it wasn't traditionalism anew. It was a combination of new and old, pragmatic combination of new and old.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And what they did is they identified a phenomenon which you're seeing in your houses, which is traditional exteriors and quite modern interiors with very advanced infrastructure. For example, a traditional town, but with centralized management, centralized first-rate management. So it's that combination which has always affected what I do. And I think it's misunderstood by the Guild. The Guild believes that the closer we get to tradition, the better. Okay, the new urbanism, which was highly influenced by Celebration, because that was one of the earliest. Remember, there was Seaside. Remember, when those guys went to see something, there was only Seaside. So
Right.
Celebration is very early.
Yep.
And Celebration came up with that concept of neo-traditionalism, which is the combination of whatever works best. We've forgotten that. We've forgotten that. We are always trying to go back to the original brick, the original lumber, the original green, the original everything. And that was not the idea. And Celebration's success was combinatory. Now, the fact that the urbanism, the old urbanism, is really what's best, and the fact that traditional architecture is really what's best, doesn't mean that a lot of the underlying protocols aren't incredibly modern. And
Right.
that actually there are lots of materials there that are actually incredibly modern. And a lot of things that were attempted, like your building there that converted the first floor, that were incredibly radical, okay? And it's that combination that I wish the new urbanism would get back to. And it's a moving target because at the time, that traditional architecture was both extremely popular and also radical. Okay, it could get published. You know, we lived in a halcyon years in which we were both the most radical, particularly Bob Stern, actually lived being a traditional architect of great popularity and also the most radical architect on earth. He pissed everybody off. It was a wonderful position. But if you look at residential architect, this week's issue, for example, this week's issue of residential architect, you may know that residential architect began, it's a builder's magazine, and it began with traditional architecture, right? That's how it began. It began to counter dwell. And if you look at the current issue, just came out 2 days ago, it's 100% modernist.
Right.
And I think we're missing out. I find more and more of my younger clients actually want modernism. And let me tell you, we don't know how to do it. You know, I know we have the most talented architects on earth, the guild is, but just because they decide to do modernism doesn't mean they're good at it. I have to say, I mean, we have to be blunt. And if you look at residential architect, and I would suggest all of you do, you know, it's a magazine for us who work for builders. I think we need to actually up our game. And that's the challenge, I think, for the next generation. The world is changing. Celebration's 30 years old. The world is changing, and I think we can do it. We can do it again, and we can do it better.
I don't think we all have to shift gears 100%.
No, we don't. But
I've designed several pure modern houses, and they're okay. You know, they're not like groundbreaking published.
are they really good?
I modestly say, yeah, they're good, but you know, down in Albany and in Disney, we have some modern houses. We've said if it's going to be modern, it's going to be really modern. It's not, we're not.
So why doesn't the guild publish those?
Um,
Because I don't know of them. All I've ever seen is one house by Gary Justice, one, and I understand there's a secret house by Bobby McAlpin, and that's about it from this group. And I'd like to see more. Why are we hiding this stuff?
oh, I don't know.
Leslie, you find out.
I will. I'm on the case.
Thanks, Andreas.
Okay,
Thank
great
you.
job, man. Incredible.
Awesome.
I echo that, Geoffrey. Thank you so much for a stellar presentation and for elevating the education of the Guild. You know, this is part of this series of Live at the Guild is really for the Guild to be a resource for design education. And you've certainly demonstrated that this evening, and it sounds like we have a lot more conversations to come. And we hope that all of you will join us next month for Gary Brewer will be presenting on July the 28th. So we'll have more information and certainly a follow-up from what we discussed here as well, to have a roundtable and really dive in and get real, basically. So thank you all for being here. It's a pleasure to be with you, and have a great week. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. It was very pleasant.